Molly, hi, and welcome to Radio Out There. Nice to talk to you. First time on the program, that's how you have.
That's correct.
Right. Now, you and I have known each other for a while, and I thought we could get together and have a chat about all sorts of wonderful things. But first of all, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself so the audience can get to know you a little bit better?
Okay, thanks, Barry. Yes, thanks for the opportunity to talk to everybody. Yes, well, where do I start? I guess my main areas of work and what I do is I work with astrology and tarot and numerology. So they're sort of that's my background in the esoteric world. And I've been doing all of those for many years. I do work professionally and I do readings for people. I've done a lot of teaching. I've taught astrology through the local community college for 20 years and also tarot as well. So I teach both of those. Yes, and I also do readings for people and workshops and parties and things. So quite a very write column, written for about 1 or 2 magazines. So yeah, and I guess my main goal with all of my work is to expand people's understanding of themselves through those modalities and to give them some guidance. I see it like rather than just a blank canvas, we've got something that gives us a bit of a feel of where we're going and how best to handle it.
Okay, that's great. Now, I know you and I worked together a couple of years ago when you asked me to come along to the Guild of you're the Sydney coordinator of the Tarot Guild of Australia.
Australia, that's correct.
And you asked me to come on and give a talk. We'll talk about tarot first of all, I think, because on the program I have had a lot of time over the years with Neil Hare, who you know very well. And we talk a lot about astrology. And there's a few things that I'd like to sort of make a lot easier for people, but we'll go on to that shortly. But let's start off with tarot. You teach it, you do all sorts of things. What is the benefit? Now, I've been doing tarot myself too for 30 odd years. But what do you find is the benefit that people can get out of a tarot reading?
My feeling is that it's quick and easy. And I say that in quotations, obviously. But I mean, I've seen it with my own students when they learn. I think it provides, when someone wants and I do it myself. When I want the answer to something, I can just put down 2 or 3 cards, and it can give me some insights as to how to handle something or what might happen. So that's a really easy way that tarot can be used almost on a regular basis. And I personally draw a couple of cards each day and look to see how they manifest in my life. And I'm blown away by the way some of them do. Sometimes they don't, but often, and it expands my own knowledge of the tarot and the ways that different cards can be used. So I feel that and a tarot reading for somebody, often what I find most times and what I find the most beneficial readings are when someone comes to me and at the end they say, "You've just confirmed what I needed to know." And I think that's often what it's about. It's about people's, what happens is that really through the cards, we bring what's going on in the unconscious for somebody to the surface. And those cards represent what's actually happening. And then I start to interpret and we start to share about, how that relates and how it can give someone some guidance.
Fair enough. Now, I think that, like you, I've been in it for a while. I did my first reading at the Mind, Body, Spirit Festival back in the early 90s, which is brilliant. And the audience, or the people who came along at the Mind, Body, Spirit Festival were very sort of converted, shall we say. I'm wondering how you have found over the years, has this appeal, audience, whatever, has this expanded a lot, particularly in recent times when there's so much stress and so many problems in the world? Are people turning to this more and more, do you find?
I do. I mean, I started teaching astrology back in 1990, And, people really would go, oh, what's that? What's that? Whereas nowadays, everybody knows what it is.
Mm.
And yes, I do feel that there's more and more interest. Sometimes hard to find or pick because it's often going on behind the scenes. People don't openly reveal that, hey, I do tarot or astrology, because there's always a response of some kind from other people to it. However, I do find more and more people, and I suppose because I'm that bit older, I do attract older people, and it's interesting the number of older people who come to me for readings. I've got an 80-year-old coming tomorrow, so it crosses the age, and I find that it really is helpful to people when they're in those transition points. So, when they're going from maybe into retirement or into going back to work or something like that, all those sorts of things. So I find that sort of, they're the times when, people come when they've got some issue that's bothering them and they want a bit more clarity. I say it's like getting a third person to give you a perspective on what's happening.
So in the past, I guess a lot of people would have thought, well, I have to go to a counsellor or a psychologist or somebody else or the church. Now, there seems to be less reliance, shall we say, on these areas and more looking for other answers. Have you found that?
Yeah, I think so. And I think quite often I'll get people who have been to psychologists who say, oh, I got more out of this reading than I did out of the counselling. And I think the great gift of both tarot and astrology is that we can pinpoint, we can go, we've got some, when a client comes in as a counsellor, you've got no idea really of their background, of what, you can spend the first half hour trying to understand what's happening. Whereas particularly with the tarot, and I find this when I do short readings for people and things like that, once those cards are on the table, I go, oh, well, okay, what's this about? I remember I quite often do parties for people, hens parties, corporate parties. And I remember doing a hens party, and the first card out was the Five of Cups. Now that depicts somebody who looks really sad and upset and, almost a grief card. And I thought, oh, what's going on here? This is the bride. Anyway, it was interesting because, I looked at the rest of the cards and I just happened in conversation to say something to her about it. And it turned out that she was getting married and very close to her family and going to move and live in Singapore. So that was the Five of Cups. That's exactly what it represented.
Five of Cups, yeah.
So, it just gave her a chance to talk a bit. It gave me a chance to go straight to something that was really important.
Yeah, that's very true.
It's like a laser. It goes in and it's like, here we are.
Now, there's also many different kinds of tarot cards around, and there are different ways of reading them as well. I know you asked me to come on and give a talk at your Tarot Guild a couple of years back, because I tend to use more intuitive, whereas I think you like to do the straight interpretation on cards.
I do and I don't. I think over the years, my intuition, like everybody who works in this field, has developed a lot. And but yes, I do. I suppose because I've taught it so much, the core meanings are always there at the back of my mind, no matter what cards I'm using. But yes, I do also listen more and more to my intuition as well, blending the two in. I suppose it's looking at the card because a lot of the cards can have a variety of meanings depending on what else is with them.
Yeah.
Surrounds them.
Yeah. That's very true.
And it's obviously aligning it to the client too. To what the issue is for them.
I think on the night, I remember I had my cards here, which I'll hold up for the TV viewers, and they're the Voyager cards, and they're wonderful. I'll just shuffle them and just pull something out. Just for a bit of fun here. Oh, something fell out. I wonder what it is that just fell out. It's the Six of Crystals, which is confusion. So what's that confusion today, Molly? Are you a little confused about something today?
Only that I've got a lot on. That's probably the only thing that's confusing. My life sometimes goes into different parts,
Yeah, I must admit, I have been a little confused about a couple of things that are going on right now. So maybe that was the message that I needed to hear.
Maybe it's for you rather than me.
Mm, that's right. But as you said before, so I can hold that one up in front of the
Mm,
camera for those who are watching this on YouTube. And I tell my
yeah,
listeners as well, please have a look at the YouTube. I'll put a link up there, so do have a look. But that one there
yeah,
is very different to the cards that you use. The only point I'm
absolutely.
trying
Yeah.
to make is I'm not saying I'm better than you or whatever,
No,
but the fact that there are different ways, different cards,
yes,
different interpretations, different feelings, and
yes.
how much intuition is there. Because for me, it's always been intuition. It's sort of been my really top um, card to play, I was going to say.
Well, I think too. I mean, I think intuition has always been there. I think for
Mm,
any reader to get into this field, intuition is definitely, you know, a natural or
mm,
intuition. It's a word we sort of buzz around a lot, but most people, not most people, a lot of people have got a definite. It's like when you first meet someone, you have a feeling about that person.
yeah,
Well, that's your
that's right.
intuition, you
Mm,
know.
mm,
And yeah, when I lay the cards out, the thing about tarot, I suppose, is that it's so visual.
mm,
So the visual, so it's finding a pack that you resonate with, that the images speak to you,
yes, very much.
uh, at a personal level. I think that's,
Mm,
and I've used a lot of different packs over the years, and
mm,
yeah, but most of mine still go back to a similarity to the Rider-Waite, which is the
mm.
original pack. Mm.
Yeah, yeah, that was one I learned on as well, the right of way.
Yeah, that's the one I teach with.
But I think it's like anything in life, isn't it? You start off, and if you find that there are better ways of doing things, whether you're laying bricks or whether you're looking at tarot cards or whether you're a surgeon, there might be a better way of operating than the way we have
Yeah.
been doing for a while. So it
Mm.
pays to keep your mind and your heart open. What do you think?
Mm. Absolutely, absolutely, especially in the world today, which is changing so dramatically
Yeah.
as we
So
speak.
are you finding people coming to you very stressed out about what's going on in the world?
I wouldn't say stressed out necessarily, but more wanting, more ready for change. I mean, they're not, people are making big changes in their lives.
Mm,
That's what I see. And,
yeah.
like maybe work, it might be where they live, it might be relationship stuff, friendships. A lot of people have had very big changes over the last 3 years and
Mm,
in every area of their life, to be honest. It's certainly turned everyone's world upside down.
yeah, it has.
And I think people are gradually getting their feet back on the ground, but they have to realize that it won't be like it was.
No, but change is there all the time, isn't it?
It is, but this has been particularly dramatic,
Mm, that's for sure. That's for sure.
I think, mainly because of the fear it's built,
Mm, mm,
and and the control. I think all those aspects of it have been hard for people to let go of,
mm,
which is
mm,
fair enough.
yeah.
Mm, mm,
Molly, let's turn our attention to astrology now because
mhm.
that was where I started. I learned from a wonderful guy who's now passed over, Gary Wiseman. And Gary taught me
Yes,
astrology.
there you
He used
go.
to come onto my radio program I had. I used to do a mainstream radio program back in the
Oh,
1980s
wow.
on commercial radio. And I had
Yeah.
Gary doing astrology. I had Mark Bruner doing numerology. Then I had Diana Shaw doing psychic work. And
Oh my God.
then that was my transition time, if you like. So I
Yes.
turned from being a broadcaster full time and producer
Yes.
and whatever into this whole area, which opened up a whole new
Wow.
field for me. So why did you decide to study astrology? Why not other things? Why astrology?
Well, I guess, okay. I've always been interested in people and loved psychology from a young age, I guess.
Mm,
And I, back in, oh gosh, 1978, dare I say it, 77, I had a numerology read. I got into cards, having card readings and stuff like that.
mm,
And I had a numerology reading, and the lady who did my reading said I should study this stuff. I'd be very good at it.
mm.
And so I actually thought, oh, okay. So came home, and back then we had white pages and yellow pages.
And pink pages?
pink pages,
Yeah,
and I looked through to try and find an astrology teacher, and I found one, and I signed up and never looked back.
never looked back. Yeah.
Never looked back. So, it was just like, okay, well, we do the course for the first year or so, and then it went to 2 years and 3 years, and then subsequently I've gone to, I can't remember how many workshops and conferences, and
Mm.
continue to do so because it's like every field, it's constantly changing and evolving.
Oh, totally. Not only that, Molly,
It's a whole different world now to what it
oh,
was when I first learned.
but even the study of astrology. Now, I got my diploma in 1991, what was that, 32 years ago, and
Mm.
I'm still learning. After
Oh,
32 years,
absolutely.
I
Mm.
never stop learning. There's so
No,
much there.
no.
And I think that's where so many people think, oh, astrology, that's 3 lines in a newspaper or magazine. Now, I know you do magazine astrology, and I did too for a while there, but that's one part of astrology. But there's a whole
Absolutely.
lot more. So for those
Mm.
people who are thinking, oh, astrology, what's all that? That's just stars and planets and nonsense, Let's not. This is not an astrology lesson, but let's just
No.
tell a little bit more about it so people might understand it a bit more and how we can work with it and how it can help us to help ourselves. That's my
Absolutely.
belief.
Mm.
We need to have
Mm.
help to help us to help ourselves.
Mm. Mm. Well, I think I call the astrology your map through life.
Yeah, a blueprint.
It's like you've come in. You either look at life that you come in as a blank canvas, or you come in with something there to help you to understand who you are and where you're going on your journey.
Mm,
And so, your astrology chart, which of course is based on your time, date, and place of birth, so is unique to you and anybody else born at that particular time. Basically, what we're looking at with that is just where, if we look at, like where the planets land, what signs they're in, all that sort of, all the various bits and pieces that go into an astrology chart, is basically giving me an idea of you and who you are and where you put your energies, where you may not put them. And also, the other thing is that that chart, just as your life, doesn't stand still. So it will unfold. And I can see, through what we call the transiting planets, which is where the planets are in the sky relative to your birth chart,
mm,
like the full moon, new moon, that type of thing. That will give me some clues as to when things might change or when you might, find you need some challenges or some opportunities, as the case may be.
mm,
And then also, the other way that the chart helps us is through what we call progressions. And as the name implies, it's progressing through life.
mm,
And that gives us, that's an interesting concept because progressions are based on the idea that one day equals 1 year of your life. And I believe there is a biblical quote that says that.
mm,
And basically, the way it works is that when you're born with planets and everything at a certain place, when you're 1 day old, they move a little bit, and when you're 2 days old, they move a bit further. So by the time you're 100 days old, which will effectively equal 100 years in your life, that's your life set out. So what happens is that with progressions, because they're a slower process, we can pick up the real major turning points in someone's life.
mm.
Because
Right.
when a planet changes what we call direction or it changes signs, there are always times when people have, and I don't know how many times I've sort of said to someone, oh, what happened here? What happened here? And they go, oh, well, whoa, 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 whoa.
Mm,
So really, it's a really good timing tool
yeah.
as well. Um,
Let's
and
go
we
back to
don't.
basics for a moment, Molly, because so many people think, oh, well, astrology is, okay, I was born in July, so I'm a Cancer. You're
Mm,
born whenever, and that's what you are. So a lot of people think, well, that's it, that's astrology. In fact, the lady I worked with on my radio program before said to me, well, why would you study astrology? That means there's only 12 different people in the world. But when we boil, I know, well, when we boil it down, every planet has significance. And why
yes.
the planet? Why is some little light in the sky out there? So
Mm.
Is there an easy explanation of people sitting there thinking, no, I don't want an astrology lesson. I just want to know the basics. Why? Why would a light in the sky or a planet and way out there like Saturn or Uranus,
Mm.
or why would that have an effect on me? I'm on Earth. What the hell? What on earth has that got to do with it?
Well, I think the easiest way to explain to people is the impact of the full moon.
Mm-hmm.
If you think of the full moon and what happens to people, talk to anyone in emergencies, police, anybody like that, they will know exactly when it's a full moon.
Oh, yes.
So, that's just a simple example of what's up there is affecting us, the tides, the seismic activity in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's just a simple example. In terms of actually, defining that this is how it works, I don't know if I have the answers to that.
Well, I've always looked at it
I mean,
as,
I just find that I suppose it's our connection. Yeah, it is as above, so below, isn't it? But we've tended to just live in the as below rather than as
as
above.
above. Yeah. Well, I had
And
it
years
explained to me
go
at one
back to.
stage that it's all about
Mm,
energy. And that makes
yeah,
sense to me because we are
yes,
energy.
it is. It's about, well, it's each planet has a different energy,
Mm,
and depending on that is transmitted through
mm,
it. I mean, I don't claim to understand how it works. I just know it does,
yeah,
which
yeah.
is probably not satisfactory for the scientists amongst them. But anyway, uh,
No, but the thing is that we don't look just at the sun and the moon. We look at various other planets, and each one
yes.
we associate with an aspect of our life and the
Mm,
way all planets are, like Mercury. Well, then we ally it to the gods, for instance, the Roman gods. Mercury was the god of communication. So
mm,
the wings god, the fellow with the wings on
mm,
his feet and the wings
mm,
on his helmet. So that is about communication and so on. So those
mm.
archetypes
Yes,
is how we look at it.
that's
So
exactly right.
yeah,
Yeah, and I
let's talk a bit about that.
well, I think one thing if we look, say, for example, at what we call the ascendant, which is based on the time you were born. That's the sign that might be sitting there then, time you were born, and the sun and the moon, which can give us a really easy understanding of someone. And I often say to people, because the ascendant is like the mask that we wear,
Mm,
which is interesting because whereas the sun and the moon are, the moon is more our emotional side and the sun is more our conscious side.
mm,
And it's interesting for people to get a grasp of that, to think about, when you first meet someone, particularly in a work situation where you're forced to be with that person long enough to get to know them better.
mm, yeah.
And that ascendant is so interesting to see because it's the first impression you get, and quite often we'll go with that.
Mm, mm.
And the opposite of that is the descendant, which is who we fall in love with. So we just hope that we don't fall in love with and marry the ascendant without finding out more about what lies behind that mask.
Fair enough.
And people do.
Yeah, they do. They do indeed. So that's the
But
rising
yeah,
sign
in
on.
terms of the planets themselves, I mean, yes, they've each, I'm not a great one for mythology, so I don't claim to be. But each of them, yeah, represents, as you say, Mercury is our communication, Venus is involved with our relationships, as we'd expect,
Goddess
the
of
goddess
love.
of love. Yeah, exactly. And our financial side too,
Yes.
the goddess of money as well. Money and love go together,
Yeah.
as we see in marriage and in divorce.
Yeah, been there, done that. Yeah, right. Let's move on.
Mars, of course, for innate needs no explanation. It's our energy drive, our courage to approach things, and then
Yeah.
we go out to sort of the slower moving planets, which don't affect people quite so much at a personal level, obviously, because they're slower moving. So,
Mm.
but yes, the personal planets can, just a synopsis of those can give us a really good idea of someone's personality and I think the other great gift of astrology, I feel, is understanding the people in our lives that we're
Yeah.
close to.
Yes, very
You
much.
know, so it's like, yeah, we can, it gives us a feel of, oh, that's why they behave like that.
Mm, mm,
And whether we, and I know recently I did a very good workshop on relationships, and the astrologer was saying that relationships these days vary hugely as to why, we might go for someone that we just like us, we might go for somebody who's completely different because we're fascinated, and it might all sorts of reasons why we end up with someone in a relationship. And these days it doesn't last forever. It
no,
lasts as long as it needs to last,
that's the
and
point, isn't it?
yeah, so
Mm,
it's very different from what, people born in the early 1900s went through.
mm,
They married for life and that was it. But we have a very different approach to relationships.
mm, mm. That's
So
true.
I think it does really give, I know I find it very helpful to understand those I'm close to, and my family too.
It does. It does. Now,
Yeah.
in some of my other guest appearances on the program, people have talked about astrology because you can do personal and also what we call mundane astrology, which is what's happening in the world,
Yes.
everything from a business right through to
Mm.
international politics and whatever. But going back to having a look at the individual, which is what we're talking about here today, so we'll leave mundane alone. But it's not only where the planets are. For instance, I've got Mars, my energy in Leo. So that's why I guess I'd like to stand out on stage
Sure.
and be seen. And here I am, studied as an actor and broadcaster and whatever. So that helps with that. But then when we start to move on a little bit, it's not only where the planets are, but it's the bits in between. Now, this is where I think there might be been a bit confused with some of my listeners in previous occasions, where we talk about, for instance, oh, those two planets are square with each other, or they're opposed,
Yeah.
or they're
What they call the
conjunct. So
aspects.
just a very quick little chat here, not a lesson, just so that people
Mm.
understand that there's more to astrology than just the sun, just the moon, but it's the angles, it's the
It is.
nuances,
Right.
shall we say.
Well, I describe it to people as the um, planet is like the actor on the stage. The sign it's in is like the clothes they're wearing.
Mm,
Where they stand on that stage is the house or the area of their life where they're putting their energy. And then we look at where the planets are around the chart or around the actual room they're in. And it's like if these people are in different areas, well, it's how do they communicate with each other? Because that's what aspects are. And
mm,
you might find in some charts that there's a whole corner, symbolically, there'd be a corner with four people standing there. In other words, there's four different energies that are trying to work together. Somebody else might have someone in every corner,
mm,
which can mean they're very versatile, but it can also mean that they're very scattered.
mm,
So it's looking at that. I would say to people when I'm looking at a photograph,
mm,
really, a picture of, and often the person can look at it themselves and say, oh gosh, they're all bunched up there, or oh, what are they doing? Oh, there's bits here and bits there, and
mm,
they comment on that, which it tells me a lot about how focused some people are. Very, very focused. If they've got a lot of planets together in one area,
mm, mm.
all their energy goes into one part, and there's a lack of balance there sometimes
That's
too.
right. Mm.
George
But
W. Bush was a good example of that.
who?
George W. Bush.
Oh, okay, right, yeah. We won't go political today.
No, I know, but I'm just saying it's because what they lack, what we look for are planets on that oppose them,
Mm,
stand on the
mm,
other side of the room, so to speak, and
yeah.
provide balance.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's like two teams opposing one another.
That's right.
So they're
And
about
some people have
180
a chart.
degrees
Some
apart.
people have a chart where they might have literally that is how their chart is that they
Mm,
spend their whole time going back and forth on this what they call seesaw.
mm,
Mm,
mm.
mm.
But then half of that, of 180 degrees, is 90, and that's a 90-degree, what we call a square. So that's
That's
an
right.
angle of conflict. So that
Yes,
also tells us other stories, doesn't it?
absolutely. And the squares are really where we grow.
Mm,
Yes, it's a challenge, but it's through the challenges that we grow. When we've got lots of aspects that are just flowing nicely. It's very nice, and it's very easy. And people always know people always know their challenges and the things that are difficult in their life. But that's the gift of coming to an astrologer. I might actually tell you what you're good at.
That's true, yeah. But there's not all opposition and conflict. There's
Absolutely
some
not.
other ones that
No.
are nice and flowing, or they're there to help
That's right.
each
That's
other.
exactly what I mean. It's energy that, but people often don't know that just because it's a bit like I play golf. Well, can't everybody else just get out there and play golf? No.
No, my back won't let me.
So it's that, it's knowing your natural talents versus versus the talents. Whereas when you give me something practical to look at and do, because I have very low earth in my chart, I'm just flummoxed. I have to call my Taurian husband to give me a hand.
Well, I have a Taurian partner, as you know, so she's very helpful for me too.
Exactly.
Oh dear.
So
these are some of the little stories here. There's a lot more, but it might help people to understand that there's a lot more there involved. So, but it builds up the whole picture, doesn't it, of the individual. So then we move on to cycles, because we all go through cycles. And I know I've talked on the program several times, in fact, every time it happens, about Mercury retrograding.
Yes,
that's another one there. So planets move in cycles, and we can talk about that. But let's talk about the cycles to start off with, and we can look at planets particularly like Jupiter, Saturn, and Uranus. I find they're the three major ones.
They are.
So tell us a bit about that.
Okay, well, basically with cycles, what's happening is that, as the name implies, a planet is going back to a certain point at a regular time. So in your birth chart, it goes back to a certain point on a regular basis, and depending on the planet, depends on the length of time. And what you find happening is often that those issues that came up at that time get revisited in some form, usually in a form of progressing beyond, building on the basics. So Jupiter, for example, has a 12-year cycle. So
in other words, it takes 12 years to go all the way around and come back.
It goes all the way around. That's right. And it's Jupiter is very much about expansion and growth and broadening our horizons and our knowledge and that sort of thing. And so, at age 12 is when we go to high school. The next cycle is 24, and a lot of people will go traveling overseas around that age, or take up some kind of study, or get into work or something. Years ago, it used to be when you had your first child. That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
With Jupiter's expansion, now it's more likely to happen on the next one at 36.
Yeah, right. That's true. That's very true.
Yeah, it's more like, and then you can keep going through that saga. So it's some kind of way in which you're expanding your world. Whereas Saturn, which has a 29-year cycle, and that's the one a lot of people know about, because a lot of people know about the Saturn return.
The Saturn return, yes. People are knowing about that now, aren't they?
Yes. A lot of people will. Oh, yeah, okay, and that happens, around about age 29, and it's kind of like at the time I say to people, when you're meant to grow up, your 20s are for having your fun, and then at 29 you suddenly wake up and go, okay, I've got to get serious about my life now. Because that's what Saturn is. I mean, Saturn puts boundaries in and says, this is the reality of where you are. Jupiter expands and takes you, to the moon and back, but Saturn goes, come on, back down to ground.
Right.
And that has a 7 to 8 year cycle. So, you find every 7 or 8 years you're reassessing, but the main cycle is then at 58. And often, it's interesting when people have got married at 29, which is quite a common thing, that at 58, they're reevaluating that marriage. Maybe the children have left home, and it's like, okay, where do we want to go now? What do we want in our lives now? So it's really a critical time. And I find, people, they're the times when people come for readings, because they're going, oh, I need to work out the next stage in my life. And then the last one's around about 86. Now, that doesn't mean to say that you leave this world at that age, but you might, again, find yourself making some major adjustment in your life in some way.
But there has been a lot of people leaving this life. 86, 87, this year alone, quite a few well-known people,
Yes,
Hollywood stars and so, they have
that's
all
right.
passed
It
over
is
at
interesting to
87, the third Saturn return.
it's interesting to observe actually and to
Mm,
see.
mm,
And the other one is the Uranus cycle, which is an 84-year cycle.
yes.
So again, when we get into the 80s, we start to hit quite a lot of these cycles. And that's when Uranus comes back to where, and Uranus is our awakener. It's the one that gives us the shakes, it gives us the shocks, it gives us sudden events, but it also makes us want freedom and space. I mean, it's interesting that the cycles that we see with Uranus are very much about independence and freedom. So we find that the first one that we see is 21, and that used to be when you got the key of the door and left home, or go to university, college, whatever it is. But it's that restlessness that I want my own space. I want to do my own thing. The next one hits usually around about the early 40s, which again is a very critical time when we're sorting out relationships and work and all that sort of thing. What do I want to change, what I want now in my life. And then I find the one that I see quite a few people with too is around about age 63, which is sort of the retirement time in a way. Let's hitch up the caravan and go bush. So it's that's again a time when people are struggling with this. Oh, I want my freedom, but I don't know quite how to do it. And then, of course, 84 is when
84.
we start again. Yeah,
that's very true. I lived for a while near a graveyard, and every day I would finish writing. I was writing my books at the time. I'd go for a walk in the graveyard, which is up the end of my street, and the thing that hit me was so many graves of people dying or passing over at 83 or 84. So it seems to be a natural departure time, if you like.
It's a sudden thing, like a heart attack or something that just suddenly takes them.
So life does move in cycles, doesn't it?
Oh,
and that's an important part of astrology.
Oh, strong. I use it a lot with clients because even when they're, it may not be a specific cycle like that, but let's say someone's going through a difficult time and a particular pattern in their chart is triggered. I'll go back to see when was that last triggered.
That's
and I remember I had a particularly difficult time coming up in my chart, and I went to see an astrologer friend and said, help. What does this mean? And I'll never forget, she said to me, well, you've been through this before and you've survived it, so you'll survive it again.
You'll do it again.
And it was good because we had a look at what sort of things happened and how I dealt with it. And then it's like, okay, well, what can I take from that time and use more productively this time around? Because it's never going to be exactly the same as it was, but it builds. It's like life. It's like, when we're young, we're naive, and as we get older, hopefully we've got a bit more understanding of how to deal with something when it comes our way.
Hopefully.
Look,
time is just about beating us. Time is just about beating us, Molly. But just to wrap it up, for people who might be, and I know I have a lot of people who are very into the spiritual aspect, and this is a spiritual program. What about spirituality? Because you and I both go to the same spiritual church as well.
That's
spirituality
right.
and astrology and tarot, are the three linked, and do they work together?
I think so. I mean, I think you'd find that the vast majority. Now I have to be a bit careful here. I would say maybe more the tarot mediumship side. It would be into spirituality a bit more than the astrology, because the astrology tends to be a bit more, tends to be a bit more left brain, and it is quite left brain in a lot of ways, especially in the world now because of all the things we can pick up with computers and stuff. I mean, there is also the evolutionary astrology, which goes much, much deeper, and there you get into more of the spiritual side. I would imagine that most people who are into this world, do. Certainly, mediums and people like that would, because that's part of their world, and psychics. I would think so. I mean, may not necessarily practice, but they probably get into go, have groups they belong to that do spiritual things and shamanic work and things like that. So it's probably, women's workshops. I don't know, that sort of thing. I would think that's what I would imagine is the case. It does take you into that other world, and
it does, doesn't it?
yeah. And I think most people who come into this are searching and wanting to understand, and I do find that a lot of my students are from overseas. A lot of them were born overseas or have come to live here, because they're the searchers. They're the ones who are wanting to understand more about what. And the other people I attract are people who've been adopted.
Oh, really?
Because they're searching again for who am I and where do I come from? Yeah.
But I think that's part of the whole thing, isn't it? Astrology, numerology, tarot, mediumship, past lives. I do a bit of all of them, actually.
Oh, yes.
But people are looking for answers. Why am I here? What am I doing? What is my purpose? What is my meaning? And to me, that is what it's all about, helping people find their meaning in life as well.
I agree. Yes. Yes. And certainly the past lives, evolutionary astrology will take you down that track, definitely.
Certainly. Molly, it's been wonderful having a chat. We must do this again.
You.
Thank you so much, because I think it will help a lot of people understand there's a lot more to it than just flipping a few cards or looking at a few planets or whatever. They are very deep studies, and they have deep answers available there as well.
Absolutely. Yes.
All right, Molly. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Thanks, Barry.
Hi, Barry Eaton here, and welcome to Radio Out There. And our guest this week is Molly Talbot. my triple